to our second DT lesson of this 5-week block. So let's have a little recap about what the aim of this term is. Well, this term, what we are doing is we are learning to make machines out of cardboard. So in the first 3 weeks, we're going to look at various different machines and how they work. And we're going to be making lots of different examples. And then you are going to design your own little machine. It can be a special card for somebody. It could be a room sign. And you're going to use everything that you've learned in those 3 weeks. We're also going to be introducing a concept of prototyping and scalability. And we're going to look at all of those things this term. And we're building on everything that we learned last term when we were looking at making a bag or a phone case. So let's get started. So last week we were looking at the various aspects of simple machines and all of the different things that they had. So we were looking at things like gears and cogs. And this week we're going to carry on doing that. But before we do that, it's time for our creative challenge. So last week we looked at how to, that really amazing invention with somebody with a napkin that automatically wiped your face. So grab yourself a rough piece of paper and a pencil, because this week's creative challenge, where you're going to design your own amazing fictional machine, because I don't think we'll be able to make these ones, but we might be able to. But this week's challenge is, can you design a machine that could water a plant without anybody touching it? Okay. And the crazy design, the wackiest design, the better. I'm going to give you 1 minute to sketch it. Are you ready? Off you go. I would love to see these designs and for you to share these. So do share them with me if you have come up with a really great, life-changing way of watering a plant through your machine. The other thing is you can go back to this today and you can add some labels and colour it and make it even more amazing. But hopefully that's got your creative ideas going. Now what we're going to look at today is we're going to build another machine. Last week we made some flags, and we looked at very simply how basic machines are developed. Today we're going to look at something that's really important for when you get to the design point, because we're going to need in our machines levers, and we're going to need linkages. And we did levers and linkages. We used levers and linkages in our design last week, but we might need to look at what they are in a bit more detail. So do you know what the difference is between a lever and a linkage? Well, that's what we're going to look at. So the first thing to say is a lever, the very obvious example of a lever is actually a seesaw. So a lever is a really simple mechanism. We have levers all over our house, so maybe you could go and look what levers we've got. And basically a lever is a stiff bar and it moves around a pivot. There's a pivot point. So when you look at the seesaw, you can see the bar, the lever, which is the bit that you sit on. And then the pivot is the bit that the lever rotates on. Now, a pivot, and we're going to look at this in a bit more detail, because how your machine works depends on whether or not your pivot is loose or whether it's fixed. Now, in the case of this particular one, the pivot is very much loose, because if it was fixed, then the seesaw wouldn't be able to move. But sometimes you need the pivot to be fixed in order for the machine to work. Now when we're making our projects, we use card strips. So these are our levers. So we don't have a stiff metal bar, but we do still have levers. And we start using pivots. We used pivots last week. We used pivots that are split pins. Now this week our machine's going to be a little bit more tricky, because this week we are going to have some fixed pivots, and we're going to have some loose pivots, and you're going to look and see the role that they make. Now a linkage is something else that we're going to look at today. Now a linkage is where you have a lever, you usually have two levers, and you join those levers together to produce a particular type of movement. So here you can see two levers joined together, and you can see there's lots and lots of linkages so that they make an elongated pair of grabbers, like a handy Andy. But a really obvious example of a linkage is a pair of scissors. Okay, so I actually have a pair of scissors. There's two levers. I've got this lever and this lever, and they are connected together. This is the pivot point here. In fact, you can see the pivot. Here's the pivot point here, and this is the linkage. So this is basically the posh word for if you have two levers and you put them together around that pivot. And again, this is a loose pivot, because if it was a fixed pivot, I wouldn't be able to move my scissors. And this is the pivot point, but this is also known as a linkage. And so that's what we're going to be thinking about today. The difference between a lever and a linkage. Now a lever is fixed, a bit like this is fixed. This is my fixed lever. I can't do anything to that. But actually the way I assemble it with pivot points, linking other things to it, means that a simple mechanism can be made. So that's what we're going to think about. Now I have here, I'm going to turn my camera off so you can see, I have here what we're going to make today. Now can you see where the linkages are? And can you see where the main lever is? And can you see the pivot points? So the main lever is the one going through the middle. Can you see? That's the one you're going to operate in order to get the machine to work. So that very much is the main lever. And the linkages, as you can see, the pieces of card, the levers that are going across the machine, they are linked together with our pivot points. So there are the linkages. Now, as you can see, we have some loose pivots and we have some fixed pivots, because today what we're going to do is we're going to join our levers together with loose pivots, and we're going to fix pivots. We're going to join our card to the backing card. So the blue ones are the fixed pivots. They're going to join our machine to a piece of card, and they are going to be fixed. But then what's going to happen is our loose pivots, which are our orange ones on this machine, they are going to allow our lever and our linkages to move. Now, if it sounds a really bit tricky, then don't worry, because it will all make sense once you've made your machine. Now, this is the machine we're going to look at today, and this is going to help you identify where the levers are, what the linkages are, and the concept of a fixed pivot and a moving pivot. And we're going to make this, which is a bit like a chompy mouth. And the actual mechanism is going to work different than the one last week because of these fixed pivots, because we have these linkages, and because we are going to have these fixed and loose pivots. Okay, so the lever is the main lever is the one that's going to be going through the middle. We've got our chompy mouth, and we're going to think about remembering those loose and those fixed pivots. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to make the basic machine, and I want you just to watch. And then what you're going to do is I'm going to wave goodbye, and then you're going to have a go at making your own. Now, last week we didn't do something else, which we're going to do today. If you make a quite complicated machine with all these ideas when we get to week 4, you may need a guide. Can you see the guide on here? So the guide on here has 2. If you push this lever up, you can see that the output is the bit that's going to push up. So you're going to push the bottom lever. There's your input, and the output is that the lever at the top is going to push up. But it would flap about if we didn't have any guides. The main lever, as you go to push it up, would be flapping everywhere, and the output, whatever you put on the output, be it a hand, a flag, a dragon, a sunshine, whatever you were putting on it, the idea is it's going to pop up and down, but again, it will flap all over the place, because as you can see, underneath is a loose pivot, which is needed for the machine to work, but actually it would flap about without a guide. Now, a guide basically means that you just stick a few bits of cardboard on it so that it doesn't, the bits that don't need to flap about don't flap about. And that's the other thing that I'm going to introduce you today. And so we're going to build on this week by week by week to give you lots of ideas of how to make your ultimate machine by the time we get to week 4. So we're going to make another mechanism. It works a bit different. And before we go, the reason I'm just going to show you the loose way of doing it is because what you can then do is you can set your design juices flowing. It's going to be a chompy mouth machine, but last week we did wavy flags. And so I've got a couple of ones to show you. We've got a waving flag boat. We've got a waving flag sandcastle from Charlie and Ollie. We've got this other sandcastle from Diana, which the flag waves, and there's a little door there with a person inside. And so I saw lots and lots of examples of how to make, how you took what I did last week and made it into a great machine. Now, I love to see them. I don't often see all of them because Facebook can sometimes be a bit of a pest. So if you want me to definitely see them, because I love seeing them, if you could get your grown-ups to DM me, Chrissy Twinkl, over on Facebook, on Messenger. Do go and share them in the main group, though, because everybody tends to see them. But sometimes, because I get a lot of notifications, sometimes I miss them. But I definitely will see them if you DM them. But do go and share them over in our Facebook group as well, because we do love to see them. Now, for this particular machine, you're going to need, again, cardboard. Now, the first thing you're going to need is a piece of cardboard that is 15 by 3 centimetres. And then you're going to need another piece of cardboard, which is slightly longer, which is 20 by 3 centimetres. And then you're going to need another piece of cardboard. This is going to be your main lever, and that's 20 by 3 again. However, I've got to be honest, I've made my lever slightly longer, so I'm going to adapt the instructions. So if you want my opinion and my advice, I would make step 3, your third bit, I would make it 23 by 3, so that you've got a little bit more to play with. And then what you need to do is you need to have a rectangle that is 10 by 20 centimetres. And then you also need your split pins. You need some scissors to cut it all out with. You're going to need some other little bits of cards to make a guide, because we're going to be putting a guide on to help our lever. And also you're going to need some sellotape, but my children have taken my sellotape somewhere, so all I could find was some masking tape. But any sort of sticky tape will do. So let's get started. So the first thing you're going to do is, once you've cut out all of these things, you're going to take your shortest one, and then you're going to take your long lever. So the shortest one and the longest one. And what you're going to do is you're going to, remember like last week, I've actually already gone through and use my holes. But if you use one of the split pins to really carefully make your hole, particularly if you've got some card that's a bit pesky, as mine is, because it's a bit like plastic backed because it's from a cereal packet. But you're going to fasten this one, she says, to here. Okay, so that's the first thing that you're going to do. Then you're going to turn it round and you're going to do the back. Now this is going to be a loose pivot, so you need it to actually be able to move. So this is a loose pivot, so don't fasten it too hard. And then you're going to get the next one. What you're going to notice about the next one is it's slightly longer than the top one. Now you're going to come down a little way, not all the way, but a little way. And then what you're going to do is you're going to put your cardboard so that these bits end at the same time. And this one is going to hang off the side a little bit. Does that make sense? So you're going to line these two up, and then you will find that you've got a bit here that's sticking over, but that's absolutely fine. And then you're going to get your split pin, you're going to make another hole, and then you're going to fasten it to your lever, like so. Helpfully guide mine through, like so. So they're at the same length, look. And then you're going to flip it over, and then you're going to fasten it again. And this one is another loose pivot. This is another loose pivot. Okay. Now I'm just doing mine with an old cereal box. If you want to full on decorate it, then you might want to do it with plain card, but that's up to you. So that is the first bit of my machine. So I've got the top bit, and then I've got the bottom bit, and these bits are loose pivots, so they need to be able to move. The next thing I'm going to do is I am going to get my other bit of card, and I'm going to place it on my card. Now, we don't want it placed too far in because this is going to be our chompy mouth. But what we're going to do is we're going to fasten it to this card with the chompy mouth over the top. Now these are going to be fixed pins. So actually these ones are going to be what's fastening it to the card. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to put it in. And we're going to put it on our board and we're going to turn it round. And this one is going to be, you're going to just push it so it's a lot firmer, okay, because this is our fixed pivot. We want to actually fix tightly to the cardboard. So that's the first point that we're going to do. And then what you're going to do is you're going to attach your top jaw, what will be the jaw, to the cardboard again. And again, you're going to make sure that it's quite tight, because this is a fixed pivot. This one's fixed, so you're going to make sure it's nice and tight. Now already you can see the reason behind why you may need a guide, because you can see that the lever's flapping everywhere and it all looks a bit of a nightmare. So what you're going to do is you're going to carefully lay it all out so that it all looks okay. And then what you're going to need is you're going to need the guide. Okay, so you're going to need to have your guide. So the guide just needs to be a piece of cardboard like so. Now you can either put the guide here, or you could put the guide here, or you could put one in both places. But you're going to get your tape and you're going to stick your guide on, making sure that you're not going to let it interfere with any of the jaws, okay? And then that is your machine. Now, if you imagine this is all going to be this would be plain cardboard. And then what you're going to have is when you pull the lever, and you see, yum, 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 yum. I'll do it this way. Yum, 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 yum. Now mine doesn't look that great because I haven't finished decorating mine, but what I can do is I can put some teeth on, okay, and then I can decorate this with a little face, maybe like a little eye. I could add on like sticks and an ear, or I can make some hair, I could do a big collage, but that is the actual mechanism. Now let's just have a little look. Here's my lever. Okay, you see my lever? Here are my loose pivots that are allowing my mouth to chomp. It's allowing my lever to move. These are more fixed pivots. They're fixing the machine to the backing card to make it more operational. And here is my guide, and it stops my lever flapping about. So that is this week's machine. And this is what you are going to try and make. And hopefully these are the stuck-on teeth, look, that you can use so that you've got lots of lovely stuck-on teeth. Let's remove that. Let's go back to this. And then what you have is you have your teeth. Yum, 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 yum. But I would decorate it this side. Yum, 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 yum. So have a go. And remember to pick out the lever, the fixed pivots, the pivots that are looser, the rotating pivots. Have a go at creating your own guide. And remember the linkages and levers. And then get your other machine from last week and compare it. How do they work similarly and how do they work differently? And I will see you next week for more machine fun. Now, if you want to share, remember to share. I love to see them, and I will see you next week.